Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Tumbao, a podcast dedicated to helping dancers unlock the deeper aspects of Afro-Latin social dance. My name is Musa with Social Dance Mastery, and today we're diving deep into a subtle yet very powerful social dance ritual, and it's called the Cabeceo. And this is for anyone who's ever felt overlooked on the dance floor, or maybe you felt that the dancers you want to dance with don't seem to notice you. Or maybe even you might find yourself saying yes to dances that you don't want to, just to avoid the awkwardness of saying no. If this sounds like you, then this episode is for you. If you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever felt rejected or pressured into dancing, this episode is for you. And because whether we're conscious of it or not, what the Cabeceo shows us is that there's a whole unspoken language on the social dance floor. And this nonverbal dialogue is exactly what determines who gets to dance and who doesn't, and with whom. And this is what we're going to get in today with the Cabeceo. So let's get into this concept of the Cabeceo, because when we talk about the Cabeceo, we're directly talking about the head. And this word, cabeceo, it comes from the Spanish word cabeza. Cabeza meaning the head. And it basically is referring to the communication that we do from the neck up. In the context of tango, this is used the most, this concept of cabeceo. And in tango, we see that cabeceo is sort of like this formalized ritual done between the lead and the follow that allows them to communicate with each other across the dance floor, simply using the eyes and subtle gestures of the head. But what the cabeceo is actually referring to in tango is what the lead does with his head. It's sort of like a subtle nod, right? The lead will nod down and up, and this will let the follow know that, oh, this person's interested, this person wants to dance. And in response to that nod, which is called the cabeceo, the lead will give what's called a mirada. And the mirada is a facial glance, a gesture, a glare, a glance that the follow gives to the lead to let them know if they're open and receptive or not. This communication, this dialogue that happens across the room non-verbally is what we're referring to when we talk about the cabeceo. Why is this important for Afro-Latin social dancers, right? Well, a lot of the times the connection between tango and a lot of the other Afro-diasporic dances is heavily misunderstood. Sometimes tango is seen as very separate from all of these dances, and in a lot of ways, it is very unique. It is very distinct in its own culture, but it's so interesting to see how deep the roots go. In fact, the very rhythm that shaped tango is called the habanera rhythm, and it comes directly from Cuba. This is a syncopated key rhythm, and it's a part of a family of larger Afro-Cuban key rhythms, such as the cinquillo key rhythm, which eventually was used in the danzón, and also the clave key rhythm that was used in son and mambo, which would eventually become the salsa that we know today. So just like the music shares these common roots, the same thing happens with the social dance rituals. So in tango, cabeceo was really developed as a way to harmonize the interactions between the contrasting worlds of masculine and feminine energy. You know, it was a way to allow that communication to happen without awkward rejections, without forced interactions, without feeling pressure. It was a way to make that process of choosing happen smooth and happen with more flow. So I would even argue that cabeceo is not just a tango thing. Cabeceo is used in all of the other Afro-diasporic social dances. And even in fact, we use cabeceo in our everyday life, whether we're aware of it or not. Even if you've never stepped into a tango milonga, right? The social dance of tango, the social dance space of a tango, you still are using the cabeceo. We're all using our cabeceo in our everyday lives. For example, have you ever tried to get a bartender or a server's attention in a crowded bar or restaurant? You make eye contact, you lift your chin slightly, they notice you, no words were needed. That's cabeceo. Have you ever avoided eye contact with somebody that is looking at you in public, somebody that you don't really want to have an interaction with? You don't want to talk to them for whatever reason and you avoid eye contact? That's cabeceo, right? Have you ever walked into a party and noticed that certain eyes followed you as you moved through the room? That's cabeceo. Have you ever been in a waiting room or on public transportation or in your car and suddenly you feel like someone is looking at you and you look over and they're watching you? That's cabeceo. So it's so interesting to see how we do this constantly. We use our body language to see and be seen, to acknowledge, to engage, and to attract, and also to repel. All of this is happening with nonverbal communication. And when we get into the concept of the tumbao, we can see the subtle ways of how this works just from the neck up. Once you start to become more aware of cabeceo, you'll start to see it everywhere. And for example, in the context of salsa and bachata, the cabeceo works differently, but the core function of the cabeceo stays the same, right? So for example, in salsa, the cabeceo might happen at a closer distance. It might not be from all the way across the room like in tango. And often it's done with a lot more direct eye contact. And it can be done in various times throughout the salsa social. Same with bachata. In bachata, the cabeceo might be more subtle and playful. It might depend on the setting. But in different styles of Afro-diasporic dances, the cabeceo still works. It's the same function, and it ensures that a mutual choice is happening. And it's keeping the dance floor with a certain type of flow, and it allows things to happen without awkwardness and without pressure. So now that we really sort of understand this context and this foundation of the cabeceo, I'm going to talk about 4 specific and direct ways that you can start using this. Now, these 4 ways are what I call the 4 keys of cabeceo. These 4 keys of cabeceo, the first one is choice. The second one is line of sight. The third one is shine and shade. And the fourth one is miradas. And with these 4 keys, you can start using this, practicing this the next time you go social dancing. Practice it, try it out, see in your own experience how it works, right? That's how you're gonna get the most value from this, is when you see how it works for you. And eventually, you'll start to develop your own cabeceo, your own way that how you navigate the cabeceo. So let's get into these 4 keys and see really how to apply this concept of cabeceo in our lives, in our social dance experiences, and how we can use the cabeceo to really enhance our ability to connect on the dance floor and to experience social dancing in a new, transformative way. Choice is a topic that I love to introduce to my clients. As a movement coach, I really like to introduce this concept of choice because it really transforms the way we experience the social dance environment. And basically what it's all about is when you arrive to a social dance scene, party, festival, before getting into the mix, before you start dancing, just take a moment, step back and observe. Observe the scene. and observe who you might want to dance with, right? Who you might not want to dance with, right? Observe the vibe of the environment. And this is so helpful because it tunes us to the space that we're in. It gives us more spatial awareness, and it allows us the opportunity to make an intentional choice on who we want to get into dynamics with, who we want to exchange and transfer our energy with when we go dancing. As an avid social dancer myself, one of the biggest misconceptions about choice that I've seen over and over again is that a lot of times people think that the lead is the one doing the choosing and the follow sort of just waits there passively, right? But in reality, this is not the case. In reality, both the lead and the follow are making choices, right? They just do it in different ways that are in accordance with the nature of their role, right? So, for example, the lead chooses, yes, but the lead chooses with initiative, right? The lead will approach, scan the room, choose who they want to dance with, and approach, right? Now the follow chooses, yes, but the follow chooses with magnetism. So they scan the room, they choose who they want to dance with, and instead of approaching, they position themselves in the space to be seen, and they create the space for the lead to approach them, right? So choice is even more powerful, I believe, for the follow role, because a lot of the times I will get people who they just don't realize how much influence they really have, right? When it comes to choosing. I want to share a story about one of the clients I had, and she was a follow, and her biggest issue was that she didn't know how to say no to dances that she didn't want to dance, you know? And she was asking me, like, how do I say no? How do I, like, what do I do when someone comes up to me and I don't want to dance with them for whatever reason? How do I say no? And I was just like, well, let's try it a different way. I asked her a simple question. I said, when you go to the social, do you choose who you want to dance with? And she thought about it for a moment and she said, no, I just wait around until someone approaches me. And right there, that's when I saw what was going on. You know, she was so focused on how to reject the dances that she didn't want, but she never considered how to attract the ones that she did want. I was like, getting good at saying no isn't the real skill we want to build. What we want to build is getting good at choosing our yeses, right? So this sort of changed the frame, changed the approach, and this really brings up a very interesting concept that I call focus magnetism, and it's specifically powerful. It's a powerful tool for follows. And I showed my client how this works. I showed her how to shift her focus, and instead of worrying about how to avoid certain dances, I asked her to actively choose and observe the room, right? And decide, make a conscious decision, make an intentional choice who she wanted to dance with. So as soon as she made this intentional choice, her whole social dance experience shifted. Her energy changed, her attention changed, and because of this, the social dance environment reflected that back to her. So the lead that she chose, without even saying a word, ended up walking right up to her and asking for her dance. And then that's what focus magnetism is. And it's something that not a lot of people practice, but when you start practicing it, try it out for yourself. Try this out for yourself. Next time you go to a social dance space, take a moment, observe. Who do you feel drawn to, right? Who matches your energy? who do you actually want to connect with, right? Because this choice is so powerful. And the more intentional that you become about the choices you make and the dynamics that you put yourself into, right, the better your dance experiences will be overall. So now this brings us to our next key, which is called line of sight. Line of sight. Line of sight is the second key that we're going to talk about. And for this key, it's even more powerful for the leads, because as a movement coach, I get leads who have issues sometimes with getting more no's than yeses when they ask for a dance. And when this happens, I really like to observe these leads and how they navigate and move through the social dance space. And with one client, I did this. They had this issue. They were getting a lot of no's when they go dancing. So I decided to check out what they were doing, see what was happening in real time. And it was so interesting what I observed. I asked this lead to go and ask this person to dance. And what they did was they went right in front of them, like a beeline right to the follow, eyes locked in, and they went right in front of them. They put out their hand and they said, "Do you want to dance?" And I saw exactly what was going on right there. The follow was just too intimidated, and the follow didn't have any space to say no if they needed to. He came directly at the follow, almost like a train coming directly to a target, and it was just a little bit too overwhelming, and it's why the follow said no. But before saying anything, I decided to watch more and see what was going on. So I asked the lead again, okay, ask this person to dance. So what the lead did was the lead went from behind the person, tapped him on the shoulder, and asked the person to dance. Now, the follow, I saw from that interaction, the follow was very startled. The follow didn't even see that the lead was behind them. When the follow got the tap on the shoulder, they jumped a little bit, and of course the follow said no. So this was the perfect time. I knew exactly what was going on, and I decided to communicate to this lead what was happening and what they can do to have a different result. So what I did basically was I asked the lead, okay, put yourself in the shoes of the follow. And imagine you're standing at the social while someone approaches you. Now, some angles of approach will feel natural and open, and others, they're gonna feel intrusive and overwhelming. So what I call these are red zones and green zones. And this is a concept that is very interesting and I like to share with some of my clients. Some of the red zones include angles of approach that will give you high resistance and confrontation. So directly in front of a person, it's too confrontational. It creates a face-off type of dynamic rather than an invitation. So directly in front of a person would be a red zone, right? Another red zone is directly behind. This is the unseen. This is the blind spot. So it startles people. It removes their ability to engage in a mutual choice as well because they can't see when you're coming. Now, some of the green zones. These are the areas of least resistance, the most flow, and receptiveness, okay? At an angle within the peripheral vision. This is a green zone, right? So you come in at an angle so that they can see you at least in their peripheral vision. They see you're there, they can feel you and see your energy, right? Moving gradually into the line of sight. This gives a moment to recognize and acknowledge before approaching, right? Staying in the follows awareness before engaging, right? This allows for natural mutual invitation. So I had my client stand in the shoes of a follow, and I had them visualize these zones. Visualize the red zone in front of you, right? And see how the further away you get from the red zone, it starts to become into the green zone until you hit the threshold of the peripheral vision, then it starts to get back into the red zone. Like imagine this, imagine seeing this, right? From your perspective in the follow shoes, right? Now, I told him, okay, come out of that, now come back into the lead position. And now when you approach, only approach in the green zones of the follows that you want to choose, right? So this time, instead of rushing head on or catching someone off guard, or he positioned himself just inside of the follow's peripheral vision, right? And this, what this did was it naturally caught her eye, and he gave his subtle cabeceo in the way that he did it. She noticed it, received it, responded positively, and just like that, he asked her to dance and she said yes. Simply by adjusting this approach, this client immediately began to get more yeses than nos. And this changed his confidence. It changed his dancing skills. He was able to dance more and get better, and it changed his awareness of the social dance environment. So now let's get into the next key, which is shine and shade. All right, so now the next key is a little bit more abstract, but it's very powerful and very useful for social dancers. And it's a concept that I call shine and shade. And it's all about where we place our attention on the dance floor. Now, who we notice, who we engage with, who we naturally filter out, this is all incorporated into shine and shade. So let me put it this way. How you can see this is imagine your gaze as a flashlight, and whatever you look at illuminates that space, right? Whatever we look at, we're shining our attention on. And whatever we're not looking at, we're shading our attention on. So when a lead shines on a follow, right, it's a silent invitation. It's saying, I see you. Right? So now when a follow returns that shine, then it becomes a mutual exchange. I see you too, right? And this is the ideal scenario that we really want, is when two dancers are shining on each other, right? It's a smooth and natural connection before the dance begins. But now the other side of shine is shade, and shade also exists. Right? It's important to know that it's natural to have shine and it's natural to have shade. Even though we might want to avoid shade, we might not want to acknowledge shade, as long as we're shining our attention on something, our intention is being directed away from something else. So there's a shade happening behind every shine, right? So sometimes we're not drawn to certain dancers, or other times shade is very intentional. We might have to set a boundary between certain people. So shade is a natural aspect of the social dance environment and should be treated as such. When shade is acknowledged, then we can use shade to our advantage in order to set boundaries if we need to set boundaries, in order to direct and navigate the social dance environment with harmony and grace. So have you ever been at a social and subtly avoided making contact with someone because you didn't want to dance? That's shade. Have you ever seen a lead step in front of another lead to block their cabeceo from reaching a follow? That's shade as well. It's part of the dance floor dynamic. And in any social dance situation, we're gonna have a percentage of shine and we're gonna have a percentage of shade, meaning that we're gonna have a percentage of dancers that we just feel naturally inclined to dance with. We want to get into dynamic. We want to match that energy. And then there's also going to be that other percentage of people that we might just not even notice, It might not be purposeful. We might just not vibe with certain kinds of dancers, or there might actually be a problem with a certain type of person, a personal problem, and that can also create shade. But here's the important thing. Knowing how to shine intentionally and shade when necessary, it gives you the ability to influence your social dance experience, right? Usually we shine on what we want to attract and we shade on what we want to repel, right? That's how the shine and shade works. So when you start to become more aware of this, you'll start to notice that social dancing is not just about movement, but it's also about energy, it's about awareness, and it's about where we're focusing our attention. And that leads us to our next key, our last key that we're going to get into, which is the different types of miradas. All right, now let's talk about miradas. Miradas, remember, it represents a glance or a glare. It could be a glance or a glare, right? Cabeceo isn't just about how you approach, it's also about how we respond and how we read the responses, right? So a mirada is just a glance, but in the world of social dancing, it's so much more. It's an actual form of communication. I like to think of miradas as red lights and green lights. Green light means go, red light means stop, right? So if you can read the signals, you'll know exactly when to approach and you'll know when to redirect your attention somewhere else. So let's talk about green light miradas. Green light miradas are very interesting. They're subtle ways that we use our head and our eyes to communicate yeses and nos. So for example, the double take. The double take is a green light mirada, a glance, then you look away, then another glance back. A double take, right? This is one of the clearest yes signals. You've been noticed, they're checking again, and they're confirming it, right? Now another green light mirada is the down then up glance. Okay, the quick look down, then back up at you. That's a classic sign of curiosity, right? Someone's checking you out. Another green light mirada is the look and the smile, right? Eye contact followed by a small, subtle smile. Right? This is an unmistakable green light. It's an open invitation, right? One more green light mirada is a brief glance and look away. A quick look in your direction and then a natural turn away. It might seem neutral, but it actually signals openness without pressure, right? So these are all different green light miradas or signs of interest. And when you really start to become aware of these, you can see how these work and how these are being used all the time. And let's talk about the red light miradas. Red light miradas, one clear one, is the up and down scan. You know, someone looks up and then they look down. It's almost like a slow look from head to toe. It's usually it's more judgmental than inviting. It often signals disinterest or disgust or even hesitation, you know? Another red light mirada is a glance and immediate avoidance. A quick look and a fast turn away, right? This is a clear not interested signal, right? And it's best to move on if you see this one, right? Another red light mirada is the flat stare with no warmth. Just staring someone directly and no emotional signs at all. You know, this is usually eye contact, no expression, no engagement. If there's no energy behind the mirada, it's probably a no. So why do miradas matter so much? Well, the more you tune in to these signals, the smoother your dance interactions will be for the lead and the follow. For the lead, no more awkward rejections because you'll only approach when the energy's mutual, right? For the follows, no more feeling pressured because you'll be able to communicate your yes or no before anyone even asks you, right? So at the end of the day, Cabeceo, it isn't about rules, it isn't about a strict formal procedure or anything like that. It's just about awareness. And you'll develop your own cabeceo the more you practice it, right? And in every scene, the cabeceo is done a little different ways, but in all, you'll experience less rejection when you recognize when there's a mutual invitation. You'll feel more confident about choosing and being chosen. You'll have smoother and more connected dances, because it's almost like you start on the right foot. It's like a good first impression when you begin with the cabeceo. Next time you go social dancing, try it. Try it out. First, observe your space, right? That's the first thing you want to do. Then you want to notice who's looking at you, okay? Who are you shining on, right? And who's shining back at you? And by the end of this, you'll start to see how connections, they really start before the dance begins. The actual process of connecting with another person, it's before touch, it's before you lock frames. It happens in that subtle nonverbal communication before the dance begins. And this is the essence of Cabeceo. So thanks again for tuning in to this episode in the Art of Tumbao. We've broken down Cabeceo, miradas, the silent language of social dance. But now I really want to hear from you. I want to hear your feedback. What stood out the most in this episode? Interact with this episode. Leave some comments. Let me know some topics that you're interested in hearing, some topics that you want to know more about. And let me know if you've ever noticed Cabeceo in your life, in your social dance experience. Have you ever used Cabeceo? I want to know. Let's keep the conversation going. If you found this episode helpful or useful at all, share it with somebody else. Drop a comment, send me a message. I love to hear from your thoughts, your experiences. And remember, this is just the beginning. We're only scratching the surface here. The deeper levels of social dance are gonna come more in the Art of Tumbao. So until the next time, keep shining, keep dancing, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Art of Tumbao.